Welcome to this edition of the Dean's Video Newsletter, and welcome back from your summer break. I trust everybody had a wonderful summer and you're ready to get on with the activities of the school over the course of the next year. One of the major activities that we're going to be undertaking is to focus on how do we respond to the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which speaks specifically to our Indigenous peoples and healthcare. And really, out of Justice Sinclair's report, there's a paragraph that I want to read to you because it's very important to understand where this comes from. And so to quote directly from his report, "To the Commission, reconciliation is about establishing and maintaining a mutually respectful relationship between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal peoples in this country. In order for that to happen, there has to be awareness of the past. Without truth, justice, and healing, there can be no genuine reconciliation. Reconciliation is not about closing a sad chapter of Canada's past, but about opening new healing pathways of reconciliation that are forged in truth and justice." That's a really core concept around which we are acting both nationally as well as locally. It's as much about education and understanding how we got to this state in the history of our country as it is to what do we do in moving forward. On a national basis, when we look at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, there are several points that speak directly to what needs to be done within healthcare, and even more importantly, directly to what we need to be doing as educators in this area. And there are two very different, very specific ones. So the first one really talks about calling upon medical and nursing schools in Canada to require all students to take a course dealing with Aboriginal health issues, including the history and legacy of residential schools, the United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous Peoples, treaties and Aboriginal rights, and Indigenous teachings and practices. And this will require skill-based learning in intercultural competency, conflict resolution, human rights, and anti-racism, right? Fairly specific, right? But also very broad in the types of things as educators that we need to be looking at. There's also a call to all levels of government to increase the number of Aboriginal professionals within our healthcare fields. So how do we deal with that? How do we begin to even address something of that magnitude? Well, first, in the spring of this year, at the 2017 CCME, so the Canadian Conference on Medical Education, we focused almost exclusively on the Truth and Reconciliation report and Indigenous peoples. How do we start to, as medical schools, address the issue of training the next generation of physicians? And it is far more than simply saying that we need to have more Indigenous physicians. It is that we need to ensure that throughout the entirety of our curriculum, that there's an understanding of Indigenous health and more importantly, traditional healing methods that can be incorporated into our educational paradigms. So across Canada, we as the deans of the 17 schools are working over the course of this upcoming year to really understand that what can we do as a collective. At the end of the day, we're the schools that are training the next generation of physicians for Canada, so it's our responsibility to make sure that this is done well. So that speaks largely to what we're doing on a national basis as the 17 medical schools. We then move on to what is it that we're doing as a university. And then after that, what are we actually doing as a school of medicine? At the university level, we've created a very important Indigenous Strategic Plan. Now, this has not been done in isolation. This has been done in consultation with our Indigenous partners throughout the university. There's been a massive amount of consultation across the university itself. And it really is a roadmap to help us understand how do we create a university that is open and receptive to students that are coming into this university and ensure that accessibility is open to all. For us as a medical school, that's a really important piece because our students are drawn from our university communities. And so it's as important for us to understand how do we increase the ability for our Indigenous students to come to this university as it is to understand how do we increase the capacity to come into medical school. So I would encourage that you have a look at the strategic plan for the university. It has some great high-level activities, but also talks about the philosophy as we move forward as a university. And then the final piece really relates to what we as a school are doing. Right? And as you can see, this is a microcosm of what's happening across the country. Our focus is really going to be on two issues right away. First is on education. And so we started that in the spring of this year, where all of our senior leadership on a monthly basis worked with our Indigenous leaders to create a mini curriculum that talked to us about how did we get to where we are right now, what is the history. My belief in all of that is that we need to have the leadership of our school understand well as we can, what it is that has occurred to get us to this point that we need to address. And so we focused on that. We're now moving forward to take those learnings and ask the question, what do we as a school need to do in not just in the upcoming year, but to really ingrain within our school issues of First Nations health. And how do we address that so that we're training generations of physicians that understand that there are differences in healthcare and beliefs. We need to incorporate both to ensure that we're delivering and meeting our societal responsibilities in it. So you're going to hear about events coming up within the next month. You're going to hear about events coming up over the course of the year. We're going to ensure that there's lots of discussion on this. So this is giving a very high-level view, but it's very important to realize that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was very specific about what they were asking us as medical schools to do and as leaders in medical education. And it's now time for us to act on all of that. The final piece on all of this, and this needs to be really clear, is that one of the mantras here is to do nothing about us without us, right? So all of this is going to be done and has been done in partnership with our First Nations leaders. It's not for me to say what's the appropriate thing for us to be doing as a faculty. It's for me to ensure that our faculty engages as many as we can to ensure that we're doing the right thing. So that's what's happening over the course of this year on a very, very important national topic, and we as a school are going to move forward with this. So I look forward to telling you lots more about this. I look forward to your engagement, which is going to be very important to what is really a very exciting initiative for us as a school to be focusing on. So thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you again later in the course of this year.